A lot of people say to me, how do I know if I'm where I'm supposed to be in life? How do I know if I'm doing the right thing, or if I'm following the right plan for my life, or I'm fulfilling my purpose? One of the things I'd say is, when you're at that point where you're supposed to be, you're at a point where you're not running away from anything. There's a lot of things we run away from. And I guess a good illustration would be, when I was about 22 years old, I'm brushing my teeth one day, and a little piece of my tooth came off, and it freaked me out. I was like, you always have those dreams where your teeth are falling out. Well, this wasn't a dream. This was actually, I was getting ready, and so I said to Nicole, I said, my tooth is falling off, and she said, well, that's because you've never been to a dentist. And it's true. I managed to grow up my entire life without going to the dentist. When I was a kid, I never went to the dentist. When I was in school, high school, college, I never went to the dentist. So I didn't know what to do, and at the time we lived on an island in Alaska, so I didn't pursue going to the dentist. But about 6 months later, we were visiting my parents, when all of a sudden the pain on the side of my mouth where that tooth was just intense. And I said to Nicole, I said, I think I have to do something I've never done before, and it freaks me out. I got to go to the dentist. Now, part of the reason it freaked me out was because my dad used to tell me horror stories about the dentist. He used to say, oh, they're horrible people. And so my dad actually made arrangements for me to go to a dentist in Glendive, Montana. And I got in there and met with the dentist, and I showed him my tooth, and he said, oh, that's pretty bad. Oh, when was your last visit to the dentist? And I said to him, I've never been to the dentist. He looked at me and said, really? Oh my. Well, I was going to say you got some bad issues with your mouth, but for not going to a dentist, your mouth actually looks pretty good. Okay, I'm going to show you something. And he went and grabbed this like model of, it was like human teeth, and it looked just fine. And he said, take a look at this, and I looked at it. And then he went and said, I'm going to grab something else, hold on. And he grabbed this mold that looked like it came from a German Shepherd that had been mauled in a car accident or something. I mean, there were teeth all over here and there and missing, and He said, this mold right here is the mold of somebody's mouth who has the tooth removed. And when they have their tooth removed, what happens is the teeth in the back begin to settle, and the teeth up front can change positions, and your mouth can be a big mess. So I think this tooth can be saved. I'm going to write you a prescription for penicillin, and then you guys live by Rapid City, South Dakota, so I know a surgeon there I'm going to recommend to you, and he can give you a root canal, and he can fix that for you. So I took the prescription, I walked out, and Nicole said, well, did he yank it? I said, no, he didn't yank it, he didn't take it out, he said I needed a root canal. She said, a what? I said, a root canal. Well, at the time, we weren't making any money. I mean, we were barely living on fumes. She called up Rapid City and tried to book me an appointment. She said, oh, by the way, what will this cost? And they told her, and she was like, I mean, it was like $1,500, $1,600 at the time, and we didn't have that much money. And so I said, well, you know what? I've had this rotten tooth falling apart for the last 6-7 months. Let's see how long I can go. And so I just tried to ignore the pain, and a few months later it got so bad. I mean, the pain was, the whole side of my neck was hurting, and the back of my jaw was throbbing, so it had gotten so bad. I said, Nicole, I absolutely need to make an appointment for the dentist. And so she called a local dentist in Newcastle, and I walked in, and he said, well, let me see the tooth. And I opened my mouth, and I showed him the tooth, and he looked at it, and he said, do you want me to save it? And I had this horrified look on my face. And then he started laughing. He said, I can't save that thing. That's so far gone. I'm just going to have to yank it out. And I was like, thank you, Jesus. So he takes me and he puts me in this chair. And I've only heard horror stories from my dad. I've never actually been to the dentist. And he says, well, I'm going to numb your mouth, and so this won't hurt at all. He took a little cotton swab and put some stuff around my gums. It just kind of, all of a sudden, it was like a little numb, and I was like, hey, this isn't so bad. And I'm sitting there just like, hey, this is not as bad as they've said. And then he comes out with this giant needle. And I'm like, oh, what are you doing with that? He's like, I'm going to stick this into that thing I just numbed so that your jaw's numb. are you gonna knock me out first? He said, no, I don't sedate anybody. You'll be conscious, but you won't feel anything because I've already numbed your goons. And I'm like, are you sure I'm not gonna feel anything? He just comes in and I'm like, ah! And you can, it doesn't hurt, but you can kind of feel it and you can watch it, and it's kind of freaky. Just see a big needle going into your mouth, and then he takes it out, and then he waits a few minutes and says, okay, I think you're ready. I'm going to start pulling your tooth out. And you can hear like stuff cracking, and it kind of sounds like somebody is ripping off siding from a building, only it's inside your head. And while you can't feel it necessarily, you can hear it and you can see it, and it's freaky. So he takes the tooth out of me and says, okay, you're all good. And then he gives me the little, now I want you to stay away from super hot liquids and don't drink out of a straw, and make sure that you're taking your pain medication, and make sure that you're nursing things. I don't want you eating any hard food for, he gives me all the list of how to avoid dry sockets. And so I walk out, I pay him for taking the tooth out, which was a lot less than $1,500-$1,600. It was only like $100. And I walk out to the car, and I'm like, thank you so much, thank you so much. And I looked at the car, that was nothing to that, there was nothing to that. And she said, well, we got to go get this prescription fulfilled. So we went to the pharmacy, and I walked in, and I thought I'd browse around. And she went and looked at something else for a few minutes. And then she comes back to me, and she says, you need to get in the car. And I'm like, what? There's nothing wrong with me. I feel fine. And I had like blood and ooze just like dripping out of my mouth onto my shirt. I looked like a moron, and people were like, what is wrong with him? So I went in the car and waited for her. But actually, when the numbness went away, the pain wasn't that bad. I took the pain pills. A few days later, I was pain-free. Now, for almost a year, I was living with pain that I didn't have to live with. And the reason I was living with it was because I was running away from a concept that I didn't want to deal with. I didn't want to go to the dentist. I had a fear in me of the dentist, which I'd never been to the dentist. My fear actually was an inherited fear from horror stories I've heard from other people. And so I was running away from the actual thing that helped me feel better. And there's a lot of people, I believe, that are running away from the solutions to their problems and running to their problems. We baby ourselves by never leaving our comfort zones, by always staying in these certain places, and sometimes the very things that we're running from are the things that we need to be running to. You've got a weird lump under your armpit, and you're afraid to get it checked out because you're afraid it's going to be bad news. But I'm telling you what, go get it checked out this week, because if you check it out this week, there might be time to save your life. Quit running away from the things that you need to run to. Quit being afraid. And what if you do go? And what if you do find out bad news? What if you do go to the doctor or the tax man or the preacher or your spouse or your ex or your children and run to the truth you've been running from? What if it doesn't turn out? Even if it's the worst news possible, you did the right thing. And that pain that's constantly in the back of your head that we call avoidance isn't there anymore. Sometimes it's better just to pop the zit, let it burst, and not live with that constant pressure and fear. So today, I just want to challenge you by asking you this. Is there something in your life that you're running from that you should be running to? If there is, quit wasting time. Take care of it.